All right, so that's module one. You accomplished one and two in module one. Number three, though, is you must be an expert, and we use that loosely, but you must have a really thorough understanding in the positive psychology skill or concept you are implementing. Again, most of you are sports. If you're a swimming coach, um, that doesn't really, mean that you really know everything that you need to know to shoot how to shoot a basketball, to teach how to shoot a basketball. So in the same way, just because maybe like you've experienced something that worked with this positive psychology skill or concept, or you received good training on it, it doesn't mean that you have a full understanding of that skill or concept where you're going to be able to implement it effectively. So that's the first thing that we're going to have you focus on in Module 2. Well, one of the first things that you're going to be focusing on is really gaining a thorough understanding of the one or two positive psychology skills and concepts you are implementing. And you're going to do that through a research theory paper. Gloria referred to this, I think, a couple of times as a literature review. Initially, we were going to have you do a literature review because that's like a little bit more academic for a master's program. But after thinking it through, I wanted it to make it more of a theory paper. And the reasoning for that is like, really, what you're doing is this is the research that defends, like, this is the research behind my theory of applying whatever it is that you wind up applying in your application plan. So it's a little shorter, it's more targeted, and it's really you being able to say to your boss, a potential client, to the people that you're working with, the athletes that you're working with. Hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why I believe and know, or have good reason to know that this is going to work. This is the research that I did behind it that really equip you to be able to make that case. So let's take a look at this research theory paper. This is due at the end of Module 2, which is in 3 weeks, so you have a decent amount of time to put this together, and you're basically answering 4 questions that, again, prepare you to teach this positive psychology construct or skill. So what is it? What is the positive psychology or coaching concept? How has it been applied? With what groups has it been applied? What are its known benefits? So if there have been randomized control group studies and we know it's causal, that this construct, gratitude, imagery has these benefits, that's great, let us know that. Or what are its potential or theoretical benefits? Maybe we don't know for sure that it causes this, but hey, there's good reason to believe, or at least in theory, that it should lead to this, and these are the studies or journal articles that you're citing that says this works. How does it work? This is the one that might be a little bit more difficult to answer. Some research articles, if it's a good research article, will help you to discover the active ingredients that cause the benefits. Others might be you have to do a little bit more digging. One of the supplemental readings I put in there was about Greg Walton in terms of positive or just psychological interventions and the different ingredients within that. I posted that. It's a mandatory reading for Module 3 when Gloria does the application plan. But I posted that now. If you're struggling to find the active ingredients, I feel like that article could be a good resource to you. So I posted that now as well. And then I really want to make sure you spend some time thinking about what is unknown about this concept or skill. What should you be cautious about? What could cause harm? What do you still need to learn when trying to integrate it for your specific population? So like, what is it that, what are the things that you need to be cautious about or that you still need to learn or want to be looking out for as you're doing this? So the goal is those 4 questions are really going to set you up with a thorough understanding of what is already known about that positive psychology skill or concept. One optional thing to add to your paper is a brief description of your application plan if you want my feedback on it. So Gloria is going to be grading your application plan and walking you through that, but I want to be of a resource to you. So if after doing this research theory paper, you either have questions about what you want to apply or want any feedback from me in terms of your application plan, feel free to put it here and I'll make sure to give you comments and give you help in any way I can. Please make sure you attach your reference list, document any sources that you use in this theory paper. For this, I really want to challenge you to try to use academic articles rather than more general, like the athletic, web pages or blogs. Just because like this is really like the research theory. If you want to call whatever it is that you're applying research based, well, this is your chance to make it research based. This is the research behind it. So really, please try to look at that. When reading journal articles, also, like the worst part about reading journal articles is when you waste your time. So I highly recommend read the abstract first, then jump down to the discussion. Um, like the stuff in the middle, only read that if you need to, but read the abstract, read the discussion. If you think this is good, this is giving you a lot of good information, then read all of it. Um, that's the best way to go about it. But I really want to challenge you to be more academic oriented in the sources that you use. To do this, we're going to continue the message board notes that you did in week 2. This is a different discussion post. You're going to get 1 grade for this discussion post. And each week, so each Thursday in module 3, in module 2 of weeks 3, 4, and 5, each Thursday you're to post 2 articles that you're using for your research theory paper. You guys did a great job on these. I took a look at them. For the most part, you were spot on. Again, Gloria will give you feedback, but post the APA citation, 2-sentence summary, and 5 to 10 key insights, questions, findings from that article. You're going to receive 1 cumulative grade for all of your posts throughout this module at the end of module 2. So on week 5, at the end of it, I'll give you a grade for all of these. Gloria will let you know if you're like way off, but for the most part, you guys were on point. So as long as you get these in on time, you should be good to go with your 5 out of 5 rating for this. The big thing, though, that I want to encourage you is read each other's stuff, share resources, comment on each other's stuff, ask questions. The reason why we're having you post these is so that you can all share the work that you're doing to create better application plans and better research theory papers. So my guess is if you're doing goal setting or imagery, you're not going to be the only person in this class doing goal setting or imagery. So I really want to make sure that you guys are sharing resources, that you're seeing what other people read, and use those resources. The reason why we're having you post them, if you found someone else found a different article in imagery, find that article, read it. Read their key points, but find that article, read it yourself, and use it in your theory paper. If you see that someone already posted an article to the message board post, you can post the same one again. Please make sure that whatever the key insights, questions, or findings are different. But I do really want to encourage you, if all of yours are from other people, and that's a bit of an issue, but I really want to encourage you to try to find unique sources when you can, just so that, the more information for everybody. But really, we're a group in this, and we're really trying to help one another do better. So this is, number 3, being an expert in the positive psychology skill or concept you're implementing. Pretty straightforward. Each week, read 2 research articles, at least look at what other people are posting. Then you can consolidate all of that research into a research theory paper, basically letting us know what you learned about this concept, what enables it to work, and what are the things to look out for. Excuse me, I had to take a sip of water. So now we are going to move on to the last thing that we know about what works and what doesn't work, and that must be an expert in how to implement the positive psychology skill or concept you chose. So you might notice that I have expert in quotes. I feel very confident in saying I have as much experience, not necessarily better, but I have as much experience in creating positive psychology programs as pretty much anyone out there. And from every range, from 6th graders all the way up to generals in the Army to, the highest levels of people to be training this stuff, surgeons, heart surgeons at the University of Pennsylvania, being able to train this stuff for like all these different people. And I still want to consider myself an expert in how to implement this stuff. This is something that we're still learning, and I think in terms of positive psychology and positive coaching, it's the biggest hole. We have a pretty good idea of what are the things that are worth teaching people, what are the things that make a difference in people's lives. We have a pretty decent idea of how they do it, but I don't think we have a good idea in how do we enable them, and how do we teach this? How do we implement this? The skills and concepts you choose to be able to do it. So just to begin, and I think part of this is the settings that we have learned a lot of stuff doesn't really apply or isn't the best way to teach positive psych. So I know a lot of you work in schools, but even for those of you who aren't working in education or schools, like think about either professional development programs your company has made you sit through, or just imagine that you've been invited as a guest speaker to come in and talk about whatever the concept is that you're choosing for your application plan. So let's just say you are choosing imagery. So you understand imagery inside and out. You've read every research article that there is about imagery. You're excited about it. You're really passionate about it. And you can't wait to teach this. And you get invited to, as a guest speaker to go into a health class and teach about imagery. So you introduce the concept. You're excited about it. You give like a big introduction like I did here. And the smartest kid in the class raises her hands and asks what? Will this be on the test? And here's the thing. If your answer is no, what happens? Yep. Heads go down, math textbooks come out, and you've lost 95% of the people in the room. Why? Because as much as we care about this stuff, as much as we know this can make a big difference in other people's lives, people are busy. And often people are thinking about what do I need to do right now? This is true in schools as well as the professional development program where the adults are on their phones or answering emails as whatever it is being taught. And listen, it makes sense to a high school student and to a professional. What matters in that moment is not imagery that could help me some later point in time, but hey, I have a math test coming up. Does this girl or guy like me? What am I doing this weekend? That's all more important to them than some, guy or gal talking about imagery. So that's the number one, in my opinion, enemy to the positive education system, us teaching this stuff being effective, is the environments in which we teach it in itself often get in the way of us being able to do it. And there's a lot of research that shows that kids today and adults and professional development programs look at what it is that's being taught to them as something external from their day-to-day life. It's something that I need to know for a test. It's something that I need to know for, some other reason that's not like applying it to my day-to-day life. And that's the thing. Even if the answer to this question is yes, you're going to be tested in it, we still are failing. We're still not helping students or people be able to apply this stuff into their day-to-day life because the goal of positive coaching, the goal of positive psychology is not for people to be able to memorize 24 character strengths and regurgitate it on the test. It's to live a life of character. So in the same way, positive coaching and positive education is a lot like health education. In terms of our goal isn't for people to learn this stuff. The goal is for behavior change, people to actually apply it. And a lot of the studies in health education show that it's relatively, well, at least not, excuse me, at least not as effective as we would like it to be. And that knowing is not the same thing as doing. For example, 85% of health education studies found an increase in health-related knowledge, but only 65% showed any change in the personal attitudes towards the content, which again shows we're not as successful at this as we are doing. So how do we bridge that gap between something I know versus something that matters to me, something that I want to apply to my life? So the reading this week, it's an older reading, but I think it provides a lot of information in terms of like how do we teach adults versus how do we teach kids, and a lot of tools that I think are valuable for anyone, and how do we bridge this gap in between knowing it and doing it, knowing it and applying it to my life. I'm going to go through now basically how I tried to discover how to bridge this gap through an extracurricular positive education program that I did and a research study that I ran on it. So the extracurricular positive education program is something that I ran at a school not too far from my home. I had probably worked in the school on and off for about 10 to 15 years. And it's an after school program that I created. It's basically the positive psych stuff that I've been teaching to adults throughout the world. I developed an after school program so that kids could do it at any time. I would run double sessions so all the sports kids could play. And then it also had a retreat as a part of it. So there were 12 workshops, about 150 minutes in length. It was completely voluntary for kids to show up. About a third to two-thirds of the students that could attended this at the school. And then it was a 3-day, 2-night retreat that took place in the school library and cafeteria. We didn't go away. The school bought a bunch of big tents and we would just do everything right there. Content is your basic overview of positive education programs. The workshops were taught a lot like school-based learning. I did my best to make it as engaging as possible. The retreat, though, was a little bit of a different experience where there was a lot of work on group formation, defining the setting, really working on different emotions and creating an atmosphere of emotions. And basically the students wrote their story, defining who they are, defining the setting that they live in, defining the characters, what are the turning points, and then how do they want to write the rest of their story together. So this program ran it again for 10 to 15 years, incredibly successful, winning the calling cards of the program. And I call it a hybrid approach because it was an approach that had classroom teaching plus the retreat. And again, if you look at these results were great. This results were taken in 2014 of a group of alumni that went through the program. A third of the students available out of the seniors that could take it did, and all but 2 students filled out the survey that took the course. But if you look at this, 77% of the students who went through this after-school course a year later were saying that they were applying what they were doing weekly. So, it was a really, really productive program. But again, this didn't let me know why it worked. It was a hodgepodge of a bunch of different positive psychology programs. Classroom learning, a retreat experience. So I wanted to take a look at, was the retreat necessary? Was the retreat the catalyst that enabled this to work? Or was it really the workshops, the classroom learning that enabled it to do? So this was for my dissertation, so I did a research design to measure the impact of the retreat, and it was a true randomized control group study. And basically what I did is